A silent auction, a simple mechanic, a choice that will change everything. Drew Talbot never imagined that one impulsive bid would pull him into a war older than the galaxy itself. Now, with two alien protectors by his side, he holds the key to a peace treaty that could either heal or destroy everything. But with enemies watching from the shadows, Drew is about to learn that some secrets are more dangerous than he ever imagined. Will he survive the trial that will decide the fate of the galaxy? The clock is ticking and the stakes are higher than ever. If you're new here, then please subscribe this channel and show thumbs up by liking the video. Now let's move to this wonderful story. Drew Talbot walked through the market on Zarvok 3, keeping his head low and his hood pulled tight around his face. The rain on this planet never fell like normal rain. It hissed when it hit the metal streets, steaming in the heavy heat, leaving black stains on the ground where it pooled. Drew didn't mind the rain, or the smell of oil and rust that filled the air. He'd gotten used to it over the years. But today something felt different. There was a tension in the air, a sense that things were about to change. Zarvok 3 was a mining world, harsh and unforgiving, a place where people came to escape their pasts or to hide from someone or something. Drew wasn't here for either reason. He was a mechanic, just a man who fixed broken things. But even a mechanic could get caught up in things beyond his control. The market was filled with all sorts of people, traders, miners, smugglers, and the occasional wanderer like Drew. Most of the faces were hidden in the shadows, their secrets just as dark as the alleys between the shops. Drew wasn't sure why he kept walking forward, why he didn't just turn around and leave. Maybe it was the whisper of a chance, a hope that today he would find what he came here for. His old repair station needed a new power converter, and this was the only place he could find one. But deep down, Drew knew that he wasn't just here for parts. There was something else, something pulling him forward. He passed by the usual stalls, the ones selling scrap metal and broken tools, when he heard something that made him stop. Voices, shouting. He turned, trying to shake off the unease crawling up his spine, but then came the sound that made his heart skip a beat. A soft cry, almost too quiet to hear over the storm. Without thinking, Drew found himself walking toward the sound. He didn't know why. It wasn't the kind of noise anyone in the market would stop for. But Drew wasn't like everyone else here. Something was drawing him, making him ignore the instinct to turn and leave. His feet moved on their own as he followed the cry down a narrow alley, past crumbling walls and half-hidden doors. The alley ended at a large rusted door, guarded by two thick, towering aliens. Their glowing eyes pierced the darkness, and their silence was more menacing than any words could be. Drew paused, watching them carefully. These weren't the kind of beings you messed with, not if you wanted to keep your life. But his feet didn't stop. He waited for a group of buyers to pass by before slipping through the door unnoticed. Inside, the air was thick and hot, the smell of sweat and metal mixing with something else, something older, darker. The lights flickered above, casting strange shadows on the walls. Drew stepped lightly, keeping his movements slow and deliberate as he surveyed the room. A dirty platform stood in the center, and cages lined the walls. Inside the cages were people, women, alien women of all shapes and sizes, their eyes dull and lifeless, their bodies bruised and broken. There was no sound, no cry, no plea, only the quiet despair in their eyes, telling stories more powerful than words ever could. Drew's heart raced as he took in the scene. He didn't know what he was expecting, but it wasn't this. The auction had already begun, the room filled with quiet murmurs from the buyers. Drew stood in the back, not sure why he hadn't turned and walked away. He could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him, suffocating him with its urgency. And then he saw them. Two women stood together on the platform, chained by the wrist. One of them was beautiful in a way that Drew had never seen before. She had silver skin that shimmered like the stars in the sky, her eyes soft, but there was something about her calmness, something that made Drew's chest tighten. She looked like someone who had seen too much, someone who had been broken by the universe itself. The other woman was different. Her skin was deep purple, her hair short and white, her eyes full of defiance. She stood tall, her chin lifted high, staring out over the crowd like she didn't care about their stares or their bids. Drew could see it in her gaze. A fight that had not yet been snuffed out. The auctioneer's voice broke through the silence, announcing them as a rare package deal. Twin protectors from the old worlds, bonded, for one price. Drew's mind raced as the bids started. 10,000 credits, 12,000, 15,000. The room was buzzing with anticipation, but Drew didn't care about the price. He didn't care about the other buyers, the men who were staring hungrily at the women as if they were nothing more than property. His eyes stayed on them, on the way they held each other, their hands never letting go even in this place. The moment felt suspended in time. Drew didn't know what made him raise his hand, but he did. 16,000 credits. The room fell silent. Someone laughed. The laughter was cruel, mocking him. A human bidding for alien women? It was almost too absurd. But Drew didn't care. He wasn't here for the auction. He wasn't here for the price. He raised his hand again. 18,000. The auctioneer hesitated. Drew could hear someone cursing in the back of the room, a traitor with metal arms shaking his head in disbelief. But the auctioneer finally spoke. Yours, human. Drew felt a shock run through him as the chain was handed over. His hands trembled as he took it, unsure of what he had just done. The two women, silent as ever, were handed to him. The purple-skinned woman yanked her arm from the auctioneer and walked toward him, pulling the silver-skinned woman with her. Neither of them spoke as they left the platform, their eyes fixed on Drew. Once outside, the rain hissed as it hit their skin. The sound was deafening, but Drew could barely hear it over the thundering of his heart. What's your name, human? The purple-skinned woman asked, her voice sharp, but curious. Drew swallowed hard. Drew Talbot. The silver-skinned woman lifted her eyes to him, her voice soft as she spoke the words that would change everything. They are yours now, human, she said, and so is the secret we carry. Drew stopped walking. What do you mean? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. Before she could answer, the purple-skinned woman grabbed his arm and pulled him forward. Not here, she said. Watchers are everywhere. Drew turned to look behind them, his heart skipping a beat as two figures stood in the shadows. Their eyes glowed faint blue, and Drew knew they weren't just watching. They were following. Drew tightened his grip on the chain, feeling the weight of the two women, the secret they carried, and the storm that was about to break. The auction was just the beginning, and his life, as he knew it, would never be the same again. Drew didn't say much as he led the two women toward his old transport. The storm outside raged harder now, the acid rain hissing against the silver hull of his dusty crawler. His mind was still spinning, trying to make sense of what had just happened. The auction, the bid, the two women. Everything felt surreal, as if he were walking through someone else's life. The purple-skinned woman, Kara, walked ahead, her sharp eyes scanning the surroundings like a soldier, always alert. Zara, the silver-skinned one, followed more quietly, her face calm but distant, as if she were lost in a memory only she could understand. Drew couldn't shake the feeling that he had made a huge mistake by buying them, but something deep inside him told him he had no choice. As they reached the transport, Kara stepped up first, climbing into the back with ease. Drew hesitated for a moment, looking at Zara, who still stood by the side of the ship, her eyes distant. Are you coming? Drew asked, unsure of what else to say. Zara looked at him then, her eyes soft but knowing. We have no choice, do we? She said, her voice almost a whisper. Drew swallowed. He wanted to say something reassuring, but the weight of her words hit him like a punch. No, they didn't have a choice. The auction had been their fate, just like it was his now. The secret they carried was now his too, whether he liked it or not. He shook his head, muttering something under his breath, and climbed into the driver's seat, trying to ignore the heavy silence that filled the cramped interior. Kara settled into the back, eyes still scanning the outside, while Zara sat quietly beside Drew. The engine hummed to life, and Drew steered the crawler through the winding, flooded streets of Zarvok 3. He didn't know where to go. He didn't know what to say. His old dome was the only place he could think of, a small, run-down shack on the outskirts of the mining colony. It wasn't much, but it was safe. He didn't speak during the drive. The storm outside made the world seem smaller, the walls of the crawler closing in around them. Every few minutes, Drew would glance at Zara and Kara, trying to figure out what was going through their minds. But they were unreadable. Both of them had an air of mystery about them that Drew couldn't place. They weren't just women. They weren't just slaves. There was something more to them, something that made him feel like he was holding on to something much bigger than he understood. The rain fell harder, the wind howling outside the transport. Drew could barely hear himself think over the noise. He turned a corner and saw his dome in the distance, a small gray speck against the dark sky. It didn't look like much, nothing more than a few pieces of scrap metal bolted together to form a shelter, but to Drew, it was home. He parked the BR, crawler outside and opened the door, stepping out into the pouring rain. Kara was the first to move, her boots crunching against the wet ground as she made her way to the door of the dome. Zara followed, her steps more measured, almost graceful, despite the chaos outside. Inside, the dome was a mess. Tools and wires were scattered everywhere, remnants of broken machines Drew hadn't gotten around to fixing. The lights flickered overhead, casting shadows across the cluttered space. Drew couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed by the state of things, but it was all he had. Not much, Drew said, rubbing the back of his neck. But it's safe. Zara looked around, her eyes scanning the room as if she was cataloging every detail. Kara, however, didn't seem to care. She moved quickly to the corner, sitting down with her arms crossed, her gaze sharp and calculating. Drew stood awkwardly in the middle of the room, unsure of what to do next. His mind was still racing. He couldn't stop thinking about the auction, about the words Zara had spoken. They are yours now, human, and so is the secret we carry. What does that mean? Drew finally asked, his voice hoarse. Kara didn't look up from her spot in the corner. You really don't know, do you? She said. Her voice was low, but there was an edge to it, like she was testing him. Drew opened his mouth to respond, but stopped. He didn't know what he expected, a reason, an answer, something that would make sense of this mess. But everything about this felt wrong, like a puzzle with too many pieces that didn't fit. Zara finally spoke. Her voice was soft, almost soothing. We're not just women, she said, and we're not just wives. Drew blinked, unsure of what she meant. What are you talking about? Zara met his gaze, her eyes deep and ancient. We carry the last piece of a peace treaty that was meant to end the war that tore the galaxy apart. Drew felt a cold shiver run down his spine. What? A treaty? Kara's sharp laugh cut through the air. It's not just a treaty. It's the key to everything, the key to stopping the destruction. She stood up, walking over to the control panel, her hand brushing against the worn buttons. Zara stood too, her eyes never leaving Drew. Your mother was one of the last peacekeepers. She helped hide us, protect us, and now it's your turn. Drew froze. My mother? What do you mean? Kara turned to face him, her expression grim. She kept you safe by keeping you blind. She knew this day would come, Drew. She knew you would be the one to carry the legacy. The words hit Drew like a punch to the stomach. His mother. She had always kept her past a secret, always pushed him away from anything that could have tied him to the galaxy's fractured history. But now it seemed like everything was tied to him, to his bloodline. Before he could respond, a small light blinked on his console. A message had arrived. Drew's heart skipped a beat as he opened it. Return them or perish. The word sent a wave of panic through him. He turned to look at Zara and Kara, his hands trembling. They found us. Zara whispered, her voice cold. Drew's mind raced. This was bigger than he ever imagined. He had just bought 2 women at an auction, But now he realized they weren't just slaves. They were protectors, and the secret they carried was one that could change the fate of the entire galaxy. As the storm raged outside, Drew knew one thing for sure: his life would never be the same again. Drew sat in silence, staring at the glowing console in front of him. The message that had just arrived still hung in the air like a heavy fog. Return them or perish. He couldn't stop replaying the words in his mind, each time more chilling than the last. Zara and Kara stood a few feet away, their silence adding to the tension in the cramped space. Drew felt his hands trembling, a cold sweat forming on his brow despite the warmth of the dome. His life had always been simple, filled with the comfort of familiar tools and broken machines that he could fix with his own hands. But now everything was different. The truth, or whatever it was that he had stumbled into, was right in front of him, and it was bigger than anything he could have imagined. "I didn't sign up for this," Drew muttered under his breath. His voice barely carried over the hum of the dome's aging machinery. He wasn't just a mechanic anymore. He wasn't just a man trying to survive on a harsh planet. He was involved in something that could change the fate of the galaxy, and the weight of it was suffocating. Kara's voice cut through the silence. "You didn't sign up for it, but you are part of it now. You've made a choice, whether you knew it or not." Drew looked up at her. "A choice? What are you talking about? I didn't choose any of this." Zara finally spoke, her voice soft but carrying the weight of centuries. "You didn't choose, but your bloodline did. Your mother did." Drew's heart skipped a beat. "My mother?" he whispered, barely believing what he was hearing. "She's dead. She was just a peacekeeper. She wasn't involved in anything like this." Zara shook her head. "Your mother was more than you know, Drew. She wasn't just a peacekeeper. She was one of the last to carry the legacy of the peacekeepers. The war that destroyed half the galaxy, she fought to stop it, and she used everything she had to keep us safe." Drew felt a sharp pang of confusion. Why didn't she tell me? Why didn't she ever tell me any of this? Kara stepped forward, her expression serious. "Because if she had, you would have been a target. There are things in this galaxy that don't forgive, Drew. She kept you safe by keeping you blind. And now that blindness is gone. You've been pulled into something much bigger." Drew's mind was spinning, each word from Kara and Zara feeling like a hammer hitting his chest. Everything he had known about his mother, his past, his life, it was all being shattered in an instant. He had spent so many years fixated on the idea that he was just a simple mechanic, that his job, his home, were all that mattered. But now, he was learning that his very bloodline was tied to the fate of the galaxy. "I don't understand," Drew said, his voice thick with disbelief. "What do you mean by legacy? What did my mother do? What am I supposed to do now?" Zara's eyes softened, but there was still a hardness to her gaze, as if she had seen too much to be completely kind. "Your mother helped hide the truth. She was one of the peacekeepers, but she was also one of the last to protect something that could stop the war. A treaty, Drew. A treaty that failed. And with it, the galaxy was plunged into chaos. But your mother, along with us, helped hide a key to restarting the peace." Drew's breath caught in his throat. "A key?" Kara nodded. "The women you bought at the auction, us, are more than just slaves or warriors. We carry the last piece of that key. We are the biological keys to a treaty that never came to pass. And now, Drew, you are tied to that legacy. You have no choice but to stand with us." The weight of her words hung in the air. Drew's heart was racing, his thoughts a tangled mess. This wasn't real. This couldn't be real. His mother, the woman who had raised him in secrecy, who had kept him in the shadows of the galaxy's history, she had been part of something so much bigger than him. She had known about the treaty, about the war, about the legacy he now carried. Zara turned away and walked over to the small window of the dome, her gaze distant. "Your mother knew this day would come. She knew that you, Drew, would be the one to unlock the past, to choose the future. Drew's mind struggled to catch up. But why me? I'm just a mechanic. I fix things. I don't fight wars. I don't... You're more than that, Kara interrupted, her voice cutting through his panic. Your heart chose us. You didn't just save us at the auction. You saw something in us that no one else saw. You felt it. That's why you're part of this now. Because they, whoever they are, they fear that heart of yours. They fear you. Drew's throat tightened as he processed her words. Who fears me? Zara's voice was low, almost mournful. The protocol. The ones who control everything. They are watching us, Drew. They are watching you. And they will come for you, for us. They will try to stop us from carrying the legacy forward. Drew felt his world narrowing. His head was spinning with the weight of everything Zara and Kara were saying, but one thing was clear. His life was no longer his own. The decision to buy the two women had been the first step, but it was a step that had led him into a war that was much older than the one he had grown up hearing about. His eyes moved to the glowing crystal resting in Zara's hand, the one that seemed to hum with power. He had seen it before, but now it felt more important than ever. It wasn't just a trinket or a tool. It was a symbol of the past, of the future, and of everything he was about to face. You'll have to learn everything now, Kara said, breaking Drew from his thoughts. The war is coming, Drew, and the key to stopping it, to making sure the galaxy doesn't fall into darkness again, it's in your hands. It always has been. Drew turned away, his hands shaking as he took a deep breath. He didn't ask for this. He didn't want it. But as he looked at the two women, the protectors, the carriers of the secret, he knew something deep down. This was only the beginning. The past was calling him, and there was no turning back. His destiny, whatever it was, had already begun. Drew stood at the edge of the darkened chamber, staring at the small glowing orb in his hand. The crystal, the key to everything, hummed softly as if it were alive. He had held it before, but now, in the silence of the underground vault, it felt different. The weight of it was heavier, as if it carried the weight of 1,000 lives. Maybe more. Beside him, Zara and Kara moved quietly, each of them immersed in their thoughts. Drew didn't need to look at them to know they were preparing for what was about to happen. The trial. The one he had been warned about. The one that would determine everything. If he passed, the galaxy might have a chance at peace. If he failed, it would plunge into war once again. The walls of the chamber seemed to pulse with an energy that was both ancient and powerful. Drew's heart raced. He had thought he was prepared for everything. But now, as the moment drew near, he realized just how little he truly understood about the path he was on. The choices he would make today would ripple through the galaxy, shaping the future in ways he could not yet comprehend. It's time, Zara said softly, her voice steady. She had always been the calm one. But even now, Drew could hear the tension in her words. Without saying another word, the three of them made their way to the center of the chamber where a strange pedestal stood. The pedestal was smooth and silver with intricate symbols etched into its surface. Drew placed the crystal on it, and as soon as it touched the stone, a low hum filled the air. The symbols on the pedestal began to glow, casting strange patterns of light across the room. Drew looked up to see 3 tall figures emerging from the shadows. They were the Watchers, the ones who would judge him. Their eyes glowed with an otherworldly light, and their faces were hidden beneath dark hoods, making it impossible to read their intentions. The lead Watcher spoke first. Drew Talbot, you stand before the tribunal, the ones who govern the fate of this galaxy. You are here because of your choice, to bond with Zara and Kara, to carry the legacy of the Peacekeepers, to hold the key to a galaxy in peril. Drew swallowed hard, his mouth dry. The weight of their words pressed down on him. He wasn't just a mechanic anymore. He wasn't just a man trying to survive on a hostile planet. He was part of something much bigger. But was he ready? Could he live up to the legacy his mother had left behind? Could he protect the future of the galaxy? The lead Watcher raised a hand, and the air around them seemed to shift, as if reality itself was bending to their will. The trial begins now. We will examine your heart, Drew Talbot. We will see if you are worthy of the power you have inherited. Your choices will determine the path of the galaxy, the peace or the war, the light or the darkness. Drew's mind raced. He had thought that he was simply buying two women at an auction. That's how it had started, at least. But now, everything had changed. Zara, Kara, and the crystal were part of an ancient legacy, a legacy that could either save or destroy everything. Drew could feel the weight of that responsibility bearing down on him. The second watcher stepped forward. His voice was deep and resonant. You have already made a choice, Drew Talbot. The moment you raised your hand at the auction, you chose to bind yourself to the legacy of the Peacekeepers. But you will face more choices now. Will you be able to choose when the stakes are high? When the galaxy's future hangs in the balance? Drew closed his eyes, trying to steady his breathing. The trial had already begun, and there was no turning back. He had chosen to save Zara and Kara, but that was just the beginning. Now he had to prove that his heart was strong enough to carry the burden of the legacy. The third watcher finally spoke. Her voice was cold, calculated. You are a human, a species that has been at the fringes of galactic affairs for centuries. Your people have been both protectors and destroyers, creating chaos and then trying to fix it. Why should we trust you with the future of the galaxy? What makes you worthy of this power? The question hit Drew like a punch to the gut. He had never seen himself as a hero. He was just a mechanic, a man who fixed things. He wasn't meant for this. But as he stood there, with the crystal humming in his hand and Zara and Kara standing by his side, he realized something. He wasn't just a mechanic. He was someone who had chosen to act when no one else would. He had chosen to fight, to protect, even if he didn't fully understand what he was fighting for. I don't have all the answers, Drew said, his voice steady, though his heart was pounding in his chest. But I know one thing. I won't let the galaxy fall into chaos. I won't let the same mistakes be made again. I'll fight for peace no matter what it takes. Even if I'm not ready. Even if I don't know everything. The watchers said nothing for a moment. The silence was deafening. Then, the lead watcher stepped forward, and Drew could feel the weight of their gaze upon him. You have made your choice, Drew Talbot, and in that choice you have shown us something we were not expecting. You have shown us the heart of a true peacekeeper. The air in the chamber seemed to shift again, the tension releasing as if the watchers had made their decision. You are worthy, the lead watcher said, his voice echoing through the room. You have chosen the path of peace, not out of duty but out of conviction, and because of that the galaxy will follow you. Drew stood frozen, his mind trying to process what had just happened. The watchers had passed their judgment. He had passed the trial. But the relief was fleeting. There was still so much ahead of him. Zara stepped forward, her voice quiet but firm. This isn't over, Drew. The war isn't over. But now, we stand together. We are bound by more than just the past. We are bound by our choices. And now, the galaxy will watch us, waiting to see if we can truly bring peace. Drew nodded slowly, feeling the weight of their words settle into his bones. He had passed the trial, but the real journey was just beginning. And as he looked at Zara and Kara, he knew that whatever happened next, they would face it together.